this room. We are coming into the home stretch. If I could use any other sports analogies, I will. We are in the final, we're in the red zone. We're coming into the final yard. We're here.
It's double overtime.
Double overtime, triple overtime, whatever that is, that's what's happening right now. So buckle up, because we've got an amazing panel of some really, really talented folks here who are going to share with us about the intersection between sport and fashion and what are those barriers that are taking place in that space, right? So I'd like to introduce our esteemed group here, our moderator, Mary Davis. Come on, give it up. Someone that I've known in very, very, very long time and is wonderful when you get to just serendipitously see people, but Michelle Blake Wilson with Empower Onyx Media. And then we just met, but I feel like we'll be friends for so long, Christine GUILFOYLE, and we're very excited to have her from See Her. And then last, but certainly not least, Alex Taylor, who is with Hoop York City, and she's got a combination of fashion and sport that she's going to share with us. And so I can't wait. I'll be taking notes. You all should be taking notes too. Mary, take it over.
Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone out there for sticking around till this part of the afternoon in today's great session. Thanks to Emmanuel and Katie for making it all happen. And I must say, looking out over the audience, the style factor in this group is already at 110%. So we're talking, I think we are talking to the right crowd here. So sport and fashion, these are not things that automatically go together in the front of everybody's mind. But I think for those of you who've been here through the day, we've heard repeated references, little sprinklings of points where fashion and sport intersect in meaningful ways. And the one I think of first is religious head covering and how important that is for all kinds of reasons, for performance, for respect and dignity, for brand purposes and creation, design of clothing. There are so many ways in which fashion and sport intersect. There are issues of performance. There are issues of functionality. Athletes want distinctive clothing, which is something we'll get into a little bit more. There can be lucrative brand sponsorships and ambassadorships that come along with a fashionable sport identity. And then there's the other issue, which we may dip into, which is post-pandemic, the ways in which sports style has become really prevalent and sometimes called athleisure, but that sport has sort of infused everything from that kind of target level sport fashion to the highest luxury houses. The economic impact of both of these fields is also massive, and when they are joined, it can be even doubled. So we have a lot to talk about. That's enough of my talking. I thought that we might get into maybe 3 topics and have everyone visit with us. Hi, Lauren. For some reason, Lauren isn't on the video here. Yes. And there you are. Can you hear us, Lauren?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, great. Now we're all connected.
Great.
Fantastic to have you with us for this panel. I was just going to say that we have maybe 3 major topics that we'll get into today. But first, I thought it would be nice for each of our panelists to say a few words about how they come to this panel, how you all come to fashion and sport as a connected thing.
Sure. Sure, I can start. Fashion and sports are 2 of my passion points. I started on 7th Avenue at 15, so the first part of my career was all in fashion. I was a buyer at Bloomingdale's, at Victoria's Secret stores. I did merchandising globally, but I was a lifelong athlete. I played tennis and I was an equestrian. And so bringing it full circle, this panel is like the intersection of my life. My two greatest passion points are fashion and sport. And because I feel as though they serve a similar role, it's an expression of oneself. It's the ability to show the world who you are, both externally with your clothes, but then, you know, on the court or on the field, physically as well. So I'm just super excited that this conversation is now a topic that more and more brands are starting to realize, and that we're actually talking about in a serious, strategic way.
Agreed.
Should we let Lauren go?
Lauren?
Lauren.
Why not?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Hamlin. I lead open innovation for Under Armour. For us, it's part of everything we do. It's in our DNA. So we're a performance sports brand, but part of that is looking good when you're training or you're on the pitch or coming home from the pitch, right? It's not just a sports specific look. You want to feel your very best. You want to have that feeling of alignment and readiness on the court. So to us, you can't separate those two things. We don't necessarily look at it through a fashion lens per se, but we do look at it from a performance, and it has to not only just have performance attributes, but make the athlete, particularly our female athletes, who we hear more from on that subject than we do our male athletes, make them feel good while they're working out and making them feel like they're performing at their best.
Great.
Terrific.
Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Guilfoyle, and I'm with SIGA, and frankly, personally, fashion is incredibly important to me. I was at Women's Wear Daily and also worked on a variety of brands throughout my career, you know, that focused on women and the intersection of their lives and fashion. But at SIGA, our role is to make sure that all women and girls in advertising, marketing, media, and entertainment truly are represented in the most respectful, authentic, and inclusive way. So when we look at this category, whether it's sports, whether it's fashion, or all of the brands that support those two entities, it's about representation. So I'm thrilled to be here today.
Thank you. Alex.
Yeah, I'm Alex Taylor. I am the founder of Hoop York City. And Hoop York City initially started as a women's basketball community, and we still continue that every day. But so much of my background has come from fashion. It's what I studied. I've done styling, and I'm a designer. And so much of what I do is rooted in making those two things connect. It really is like the most important thing for me. It's what I bring to the table when I work a lot with Adidas. You know, that is sort of the lane I fill within basketball, is making sure that whether you're an athlete or an amateur, you feel your best and look your best at the same time, whether you're on or off the court, and really just trying to blur that line between performance and lifestyle.
And as for me, I came to fashion through music and the connection of music and fashion, which is another panel discussion that we should have sometime and throw sport in there. But I was, for 8 years, the dean of the graduate school at the Fashion Institute of Technology, and then went on to teach a course at Yale just this fall on female athletes, sport, and equity. And in that course, we partnered with SIGA. SIGA was actually the client for the students in the course who came up with a slate of recommendations and ideas for SIGA, all intended to move SIGA's efforts to bring gender equity forward. And I just want to call out, one of the students from the class is here, Daisy Shaw, in the background. Thank you for coming, Daisy. So the themes I hear coming out from all four of you are confidence, comfort, self-possession, things that have to do with the way women, really anybody, but in this case, women live their lives and how they dress for that living. I want to start by talking kind of about one way in which that happens, and that is fashion and sport as pathways intertwined pathways to enhanced opportunity. And I think one of the ways to start that conversation is to really talk about, celebrities who have made it to the top and who have used that achievement to open doors as fashion figures. Naomi Osaka, who is a MasterCard athlete, actually, is a great example of this. And, she's been on the cover of Vogue. She has a brand ambassadorship with Louis Vuitton. She has her own fashion line. She's partnered with prominent designers. That's great. But what she's done with that, like Serena Williams has done as well, is take that power, that opportunity that comes with that and with the financial earnings and do something constructive with it, something that helps to empower women and girls and next generations. So I wonder if you have thoughts about that, and particularly, how it doesn't need to be just about the people who are the GOATs. It can be, this is something that can happen at all different levels. So dive in.
Sure. I think the unique part about being a woman and being an athlete at that level and having these financial opportunities is that women are focused on impact, I think, in a different way. And because of that, as they move through their career, they understand what the increased finances that they have and the impact that those finances can have on other women. And I think, for female athletes, they've worked so hard. No, we're all laughing like, absolutely. But they work so hard to get there. And as they have built their brand and these financial partnerships, they understand the power of those finances and the impact that they could have. So I just feel like they, because we're focused on impact, they understand the compounded impact that they can have greater than themselves. And I think that most women move in a space that they want to expand opportunities, but beyond just the individual.
Well, I completely agree. I think that we're going to have this conversation where we're all going to nod our heads. Statistically speaking, 96% of C-suite executives played a sport. 52% of that 96 played in college. Frankly, I think if we could today solve the issue of young girls dropping out of sport in middle school and junior high, we'd have a lot more GOATs for girls to follow, right? And I think it's the whole notion, if you can see her, you can be her, and breaking down the barriers that provide opportunity. And I think that sport and business are so beautifully aligned because of confidence and teamwork and losing, right? I think that you almost learn your best lessons from the loss. And again, if we use the Williams sisters and Naomi, they surely have lost, on and off the court. Megan, the names that we all speak. And I know when Michelle and I once spoke, it's like, how come there's not 40 names of women athletes that were able to surface up, 80 names, 120 names. But I think each of those women at stages in their careers lost for the stances that they took, whether that be for the LGBTQ community, whether that be for mental health, whether they were the only young Black girls that were out there on the tennis court. And they took that strength from adversity to really propel themselves and to set a fantastic example. And, we need more of that in every aspect of each of our businesses.
That is a fantastic point. And using the word business is important because at the end of the day, fashion is a business. Right, Alex?
Yeah, definitely. It makes me think of, female, whether you're male or female, but professional athletes establishing their, I don't know what that noise is.
Yeah.
Establishing business off of the court or the pitch or whatever, while they are currently playing as professional athletes and setting themselves up for ultimate retirement. I think about Sue Bird and her brand Together. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but it's a women's-led, media team. I've worked with them a lot. They're such an incredible powerhouse, and that's something that they've all established while they were at the prime of their careers, and thinking about like what's next and how do we pay it forward, through production, through visibility, through creating content even.
Can I piggyback on that?
absolutely.
I mean, you hit on a great point. I mean, you look at the Allison Felix and her model,
footwear,
they didn't support her. The bigger brand that she was with really turned their back on her for fundamentally a thing that's just biologically a woman's right to, and she took that ball literally and ran with it. And what I loved about what she did was she took the physicality of being a woman and turned that into a tremendous business model and products, because it wasn't just the pink tax or the pink think and just slap that on it. It was really about the construction of a woman's foot, what happens with a woman as they move through pregnancy, and just the various different manifestations of the physical woman's being.
It's about performance, right?
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, and that's, someone like Under Armour who studies that so specifically and uniquely, it's performance, and how a woman performs and a man performs completely different.
Just completely different, right? And Christine, to go back to build on something you were saying about girls leaving sport, they leave sport at twice the amount that young boys do. And it's typically around age 12, 13, when at the onset of puberty. So when you start thinking about, body positivity, that sort of thing, it's a number of things. It's not seeing women sports media represented at the same rate. It's not seeing female coaches. And then in underserved areas where I'm at our global headquarters in Baltimore, something that we've discovered is a lot of kids, particularly girls, weren't going out for team sports because they couldn't afford the gear. So we have a project called Project Rampart that's now in its 7th year, where we provide every varsity high school player, boys and girls, with a complete kit per sport. So new uniforms, new sports bras, new socks, new footwear every season. So everybody looks the same on the team. Nobody is like, oh, I have to go get knockoff shoes because I don't have. So just that, and I think particularly with girls, forming that team is so important, and keeping them through sport. As Christine mentioned, how many female C-suite, how many of them were in sport and at a collegiate level, and learning that confidence and teamwork and perseverance, it just can't be ignored. And if we lose those girls at 12, we're not getting them back. So we've got to find a way to wrap that back into the Serenas and of the world. It's okay to be a great athlete and a mom and feminine and a partner. It's okay to be all of those things. I think there's been this notion that males don't have to deal with. It's already built in with them, right? With testosterone and them being strong athletes. But we approach it from a different lens. So I think the more we start to recognize that and really pinpoint that and support and mentor young girls, I think it's going to be great, not just for brands like us, but for just the world in general. Sport's a great unifier, and we need to wrap our arms around that and make sure that continues to happen, specifically post-pandemic, because we've lost so many, at least I know here in Baltimore, we've lost so many rec programs that just were underfunded and under-resourced to begin with, and now they're gone. So what happens to those kids?
Yeah, so we've heard a lot today about some of these issues about visibility, kind of as an overarching theme. And so, yes, we've talked about role models, see her, be her. But what we haven't talked so much about is the coaching space. And we've touched a little bit on corporate leadership and board visibility, but I wonder if you have comments on the coaching, the role of the coach, or how the coach can help engender that kind of visibility.
It's all about the coach, right? And again, as an athlete, my daughters are athletes. That critical age of 12, 13, and 14, as girls start to go through puberty, I have to give a huge shout out to the teams that have done away with the white shorts or the over-sexualized uniforms. Like, there's enough going on when you don't know when you're getting your period, you know, to worry about what you're wearing on the field and how to protect yourself. And I think that coaches, they're trained in all of the mechanics of the game, but I don't know that when you get your F license that you're trained in how to talk in a positive, encouraging, supportive, self-esteem building type of way. And you know, it's like being a parent. There's more than one way to parent your children, and I would argue there are probably as depth and diversity in how you coach a team and or players on that particular team. And personally, I think that that's missing. I don't have a statistic for that, but I think that that is a huge point of girls leaving the sport.
Other thoughts?
I
Oh, go ahead, Lauren.
have to jump in. It's so hard to be virtual. I wish I could be there with you guys.
We're looking you right in
Yeah,
the eye, Lauren.
Yeah.
So weird. I just see me on two screens, so it's really strange. But I think it's obviously, we talked about this earlier about girls seeing themselves, right? You can see her, you can be her. And I think, you know, the majority of coaching has traditionally been by men. So I think we need to see not only women coaching more girl sports, but also women coaching boy sports.
Yes.
You know, there should be no division really between those two. And I think that will help build a culture of allyship, which we talk a lot about, and advocacy from the youngest level. So I think we need to see some crossover there. Definitely, obviously, more gender equality and parity, but I think also women involved more in boy sports than we've seen up to this point.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Anybody else from the room? How do you all think that fashion can play a role in this? You mentioned, yes, the white shorts, the sort of embarrassment factor that can be part of loss of confidence. Any other thoughts about how fashion can maybe be part of this visibility solution?
Designer.
I guess it just makes me think of, like, you know, these athletes that we're speaking about. So many of them have amazing personal style, and that's why we love them. You know, it's so much about who they are when they're not performing and what they're wearing when they're not performing. And giving, you know, it gives young kids something to look up to, you know, when it comes to dressing, or whether it's a pair of sneakers. You know, sneaker culture is so huge right now, and you know, we really have athletes to thank for that, because I think it's so much of, you know, the tunnel fits and everything like that is centered around the pair of shoes that they're wearing, and they sort of build from the ground up. So it just makes me think of that, and also another thought is when it comes to the coaching topic. I can say that I would not be here. I would not have started Hoop York City. I would not have continued basketball if I hadn't had a female coach in 6th grade. I can tell you that absolutely with certainty. Because when I moved into high school, I had a male coach, and he almost made me fall out of love with the game, just because of there was just a disconnect. The way that he spoke to us it didn't feel like we were on a level of respect, or, you know, he would constantly remind us that it was like, we were like the girls, and, you know, it's okay that the games are not the same. I always say that, but at the end of the day, you know, we're after equality. We're after, you know, mutual respect, and I felt like in high school, there were so many opportunities I had to quit, and I ultimately did when I was a junior in high school. I quit because of him, and Hoop York City was something that I started in 2018 to get back into the game after I moved to New York, and it was just a way for me to, you know, have women around me and make meaningful relationships with them outside of a bar as a 24-year-old, you know. So yeah,
You
those
quit
are
his
my
team. You didn't quit the sport.
I quit the sport, honestly. I did quit the sport at that time. It was a very, very traumatic experience, and I didn't pick up a ball for almost 10 years after that.
It's awful.
Yeah.
But look what it led to.
Yes, yes.
Again, adversity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Failing and, well, not failing in this case, but adversity and
Yeah.
bouncing back.
But I'm not sure that men face that same challenge, right? Ultimately, I think that just because we can all name more of them, and frankly, if we're talking about the appearance, I think it's important to note, we did a piece of research with Dentsu, one of our agency partners, and they basically said that for female athletes at every level, but obviously at the elite level is where we see it most predominantly, that the sexualization of women is a barrier to women's sports having the same level of success, visibility, or adoption as male sports. And ultimately, 71% of women say that it's up to the media, that the media and how they portray elite athletes as being sexy and attractive, versus only 29% say that they portray women as being strong. Right? So, I say to everyone in the audience who has a daughter, a niece, a neighbor, do you want them to be thought of as strong or sexy?
Yeah.
Right? And I think when you think about that, I have so many men who come up to me and they're like, oh my God, I have a daughter. I need to lean in to see her. And of course, I'm very excited about that. But what about your mother, your sister, your aunt, your cousin, your neighbor? It didn't matter to you then?
Yeah. So just a question about those statistics. Are they about on-court or on-field appearance or general appearance?
I think it's in general.
Yeah.
I mean, again, when you talk about elite athletes, I don't know that you can separate their on and off the court, right? And I think it's in everything, though. It's musicians, it's politicians. No one says, oh, did you see what, Sam had on? When he stepped up to the mic. But there's a ton of commentary when Sam steps up, regardless of what that microphone is.
Yeah. This is such a complex topic, too, because you'll all remember the backlash in the Olympics when I think it was the Norwegian beach volleyball team was protesting.
They were fined.
Yeah.
In 2021, Norway women's beach handball team, it's why I have my cards. I can't remember all the
so
stats.
glad.
They were fined 1,500 euros for improper clothing after players opted to wear shorts instead of bikini briefs. I mean, have we ever heard of a male or a male team, being fined 1,500 euro, for wearing something inappropriate?
No. So as I said, many issues. Glad you brought the statistics. That's great.
I was a Girl Scout too.
It sort of leads us into our next topic, our next overarching topic, which is female-specific design for athletes at all levels. And Lauren, I think we can start with you here. You've got that impressive-looking set of graphs behind you. So tell us your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I was just doing some. We've talked about this before, Mary. So I've been with Under Armour for 12 years. I've seen a tremendous amount of change. I was here when we came out with our first true women's line. Kevin Plank hated it, killed the whole line, and said, "Go back to the drawing board. This is not, it was typical shrink it and pink it." So our design philosophy now is designed for the female form. So that's head to toe. That's everything from sports bras down to footwear. We build our footwear off of a women's last, which is the form on which an upper midsole and outsole are formed. And that came out of research done by our biomechanics lab, Helen Wu, who's our biomech scientist out at our Portland office, who came up with this just crazy idea that perhaps women's anatomy was different than men's. Who would have thought that? So she did a great body of work and presented it, and it's expensive when you open tooling to do a last for a specific footwear run. It's not inexpensive. So she really had to back it up with data, and she did it. And our synchronicity shoe really our first run shoe has really resonated with women. Women are going to seek it out because it fits their foot, their anatomy specifically, wider toe box, narrow heel, higher arch. And so now we're taking that and sort of expanding that into our cleated product. So global football boots for women, American football boots for women, softball, diamond sports. And then we're hoping to bring that down into the girls level as well. Instead of, having to wear either boys or, size down in men's footwear, now women will have their own footwear line. And the same goes with apparel. We just have a different silhouette. So we're not going to be able to use the same forms in order to make those changes. So, and I'm seeing it across the industry. It's not just Under Armour is doing it. I think everyone finally is sort of getting on board and realizing it's important to design specifically. And I say design, not just colorways and silhouette. I mean, really everything from fabric choice to what athlete problem is looking to solve and look good while you're doing it. So that's one big wholesale change that I've seen over the last probably 5 to 7 years in the industry it was definitely overdue.
And so on target, just so necessary. So I wonder, in terms of, I know Under Armour does also a lot of outfitting of college and university teams. And so that's got to be on a large scale. Are you taking the same philosophies into that work?
Yep, absolutely. We go to the schools, we speak with the athletes, we do some consumer insights and focus groups, of course, but more importantly is we actually sit with the athletes and we're like, look, you're not going to hurt our feelings. And for a good example was the Notre Dame women's volleyball team. They weren't wearing our shoes, but they didn't want to tell us that they weren't wearing our shoes. And the reason is because a lot of these women are very tall and they're wearing maybe a size 14 or 15 shoe, and we weren't making it in women's that size. So that's a miss, right? Like that, how can you, and another example is a school that we work with, IMG, down in Bradenton, Florida, which is an elite high school prep for various sports. We went down there and talked with the women's basketball players, and they're like, well, why don't you make women's compression shorts? I'm like, well, we do. Well, we were making women's compression shorts, but we weren't making them for women who were 6'5" and above. Oh. So what they would, a 9-inch inseam on me at 5'7" is not going to be the same as an athlete who's 6'2". So those small anecdotal things, so they were having to buy men's. And so they weren't getting the colorways that they wanted. So you have to, it all comes down to that athlete. If it's going to be an authentic, whether it's footwear, apparel, accessories, more importantly, that experience, it has to come directly from athlete insights. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to go in and tell a consumer, and especially an athlete, what they should be doing. That's not how it's going to work. You need to be able to have your ears open and listening to what it is, what pain points, how can you make a frictionless experience for them? And if you can get that right, the rest of it will follow.
So interesting. Alex, when you're working with the athletes at Hoop York City, do you come across this same issue?
Definitely. I've been working with Adidas since 2020. And as I've gotten more opportunity there to design uniforms or just inline product that we're calling women's, but really take a more unisex approach, I'm learning that, even I sit in these meetings, and even something where I'll call out, when it comes to a short and calling out that maybe, athletes, particularly women who play basketball, they have butts and they have thighs. So we need a little bit more. Yeah, even when it comes to spandex, like how many of you wear spandex while you're working out and it rides up because it's not made for you? I think it really depends on, base layers are obviously a huge conversation when it comes to sports bras and leggings and biker shorts and things like that. But I think when I design in particular, I like to take a more unisex approach when it comes to style and color. With fit and everything, it's really it's a very, very big question because, how people dress is so deeply personal, especially when it comes to the athletes. So those consumer insights that you mentioned are always so important. And when I go to Hoop York City, I'm constantly looking for feedback from these women just based on, you know, what they like on court and off court, and bringing those insights to Adidas and how, you know, using it in my approach with how I design my own stuff.
I'm surprised that the athletes are quiet about it, right? I mean, at the end of the day, particularly, you know, Gen Z or trailing millennials, I think that giving their opinion is one of the things that they're the least quiet about. And frankly, I think that will benefit brands, you know, to have that in-depth dialogue and really understanding without hesitation and fingers crossed it goes your way, but what the consumer thinks and feels. About brands, about your commitment, you know, Under Armour, your commitment to performance, you know, I think is unwavering. It has been at the core of who you are as a company, and I would imagine that consumers, they know that to be true. But I think there's a lot of brands who come in and out of a cultural moment or a hop upon a trend or a fad. And again, from the research, we know that Gen Z, they are going to either call you out or vote with their pocketbooks somewhere else.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, that authenticity has to be there. And we're welcoming a new CEO at Under Armour. She's been here exactly 1 week. Stephanie Linnert, she comes to us from Marriott International. So I am really excited to see what changes. They were already in place before Stephanie came on board, but now, you know, from the very top leadership, we'll have this true commitment to women in sport. So I'm really excited to see what changes are going to be coming along these next few years.
That is super exciting. Yes. Did you have a thought, Michelle? That you were gonna
Oh, I
throw
just
in?
wanted to say, just to close this, to wrap this up and close this out, I feel like the athletes are very much communicative. They will tell you what works and what doesn't, and if they don't see it, they're doing it themselves. Back to the whole financial independence and them really investing in their journey. So, which is a really great time for us to live in, where you can have that, you know, the opportunity and the possibilities of developing those things that you don't see in the marketplace.
And last thing, because we're running out of time, but in terms of the athlete's voice, one other issue that has to do with fashion is athlete activism via fashion. Again, to go back to Naomi Osaka, her use of masks that had, face masks that had statements on them, the use of the prominence of statements on pro athletes' uniforms. Do we see a future for that, or does this seem like a fleeting moment?
No, I mean, it's been present always. Athletes have always been political role models, figures, I mean, throughout history. So I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's only going to continue to get louder, especially as the athlete, as an individual, is a brand unto themselves and don't necessarily need the confines of a major outlet or somebody else telling their story. They're going to go directly to their community, and if their community is of like mind, they support them. And there's no longer that barrier from them making statements that may not be consistent with their sport or the powers that be, if you will. They just go out there and do it. So, I mean, it's only going to be something that gets bigger.
Yeah.
And they're going to be more prominent. You look at LeBron and what he's able to do through a multitude of his companies and outlets. So I just think it's going to keep
influencer culture and currency, I don't see it going away at all, from the macro to the micro level. And again, I think that for brands, you have to embrace that this is going on, and the athletes that you're supporting, that they have their own brand, and that ultimately what it is that you may want them to do for you can be completely outside of what is good for them, and their brand is the most important thing. And I think that's definitely a switch.
Yeah.
I think as long as the internet exists, I think that it's like you're taking out that middleman, because so many of the Black Lives Matter shirts and all the other statements that have been worn You know, in every sport, we've seen it on our Instagram more than we've seen it on TV, because TV can be censored.
Right.
You know, and putting something up on your Instagram, you know, as an athlete, whether you're supposed to or not, it could be up for seconds and someone's got a screenshot of it, you know? So I think taking out that middleman of censorship, it's not going away. There's no way.
I can tell you the broadcast and the streamers, they use the fact that they're held to regulations
Right.
that the platforms and the tech companies are not held to, and how that impacts their business. And absolutely, you know, the business of the business is huge. And I think they feel like they are being held to a different level of standard. And, you know, that'll be something that we see coming down the pike, I'm sure, in Washington.
Yeah. Lauren, last word to you.
Yeah, I mean, we do, let's say, for example, in the wake of the Freddie Gray horrific event that happened here, we as a company it happened right here in our backyard. So we, as a company, we were expected to make a statement, and we did. And we've done that after George Floyd, but there has to be more than that. You know, I want there to be more than Black History Month shirts in February and International Women's Month shirts in March.
Exactly.
And, you know, to have that, and Pride gear in June. And we do all of that. And that is a step in the right direction. When I was here 12 years ago, if you'd have told me we were going to have a Pride line and an employee resource group that around Pride and around Black employees achieving together, which is another one of our group, WILL, which is a group I'm part of, which is Women Inspiring Leading and Learning, I never would have believed any of that. So there's been change, but it's not nearly enough. It needs to be part of the daily narrative, not just something we should definitely celebrate it, of course, but it needs to be integrated into our platform, our product lines moving forward, not just as well, we're only going to do this in this month only.
Yeah.
So I think you will start to see that, because I think consumers will demand it. For example, sustainability. We're being pushed hard to make our footwear, especially our footwear, more sustainable. I know a lot of brands are doing the same thing. So consumers are going to demand it, and if you don't give it to them, they're going to, you know, they'll go to another brand.
Yep. So maybe that'll be our next SIGA panel, Sustainability, Fashion, and Sport. In the meantime, let me thank all of you for participating in the panel today. It's a fantastic discussion, and let's do it again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this esteemed group here.